Welcome back to The Point of View. Today we're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, trying to understand not just what's happening within the Ghanaian context, but also what's happening on the continental level. I'm sure you've heard that in Africa, less than 2 people per 100 have been vaccinated. And in fact, less than 1% of the continent's population has been vaccinated. This compares to about 68 people per 100 in high-income countries. Trying to understand the continental picture for vaccinations and the progress being made by one of the most important vaccine manufacturers in the world, AstraZeneca. I'm very privileged to have here with me the Director for Africa for AstraZeneca, Barbara Neal. Barbara, great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to know that the company that's done the most for Africans in terms of vaccines is run in this continent by you. What does that job description mean? Africa Director of AstraZeneca. What do you do?
So I'm responsible for South Africa, Sub-Sahara Africa, which includes English-speaking and Portuguese-speaking Africa, as well as French-speaking Africa. And as AstraZeneca, we've been here in Africa, in many of the countries, for more than 25 years. Obviously, at the moment, the awareness is very much there around the vaccine. But the mainstay of our business is still within the non-communicable diseases, so areas such as asthma, diabetes, and also cancer care.
So it was upon the onset of the pandemic that you came together with Oxford to work on a vaccine. But prior to that, you were working in public health within the NCD area.
Absolutely, yes. And I think it was especially AstraZeneca's commitment together with Oxford to say we want to bring this vaccine to the world at no profit. I think that was the fundamental premise of the AstraZeneca-Oxford collaboration around the vaccine.
How does a pandemic change the way a company like yours works? Swedish, British, long track record of excellent delivery of health services. Around early 2020, we hear this thing is happening, and then 3-4 months later, it's become global. How shocking was it for even a large company that's in healthcare like yours?
So as a Anglo-Swedish company, very often we would maybe be associated with sometimes slightly slow decision making. You know, it's a big multinational. We have a huge global footprint. So I think, yes, it disrupted us fairly significantly. I think what we've done with the vaccine is actually a great example how even a big multinational can take risks, how they can be entrepreneurial, and how they can really say, well, we're doing this for what is best for people and what is best for patients. And I think that, for me, I think is what also makes me proud of what we as AstraZeneca have done during the pandemic.
At what point did AstraZeneca realize that you would have to play a role in the vaccine conversation? Because, as you said, initially nobody was sure what we were doing. It was like we're still feeling ourselves around. Has it always been in your DNA to be in the vaccine space, or was it because of the way the pandemic was evolving and one meeting led to the other? Just walk us through how you became so prominent in the vaccine conversation.
I think it's the latter. I think it was one meeting that led to another. I think, we have a very strong presence in the UK, being an Anglo-Swedish company, and I think to partner with one of the, like the most prestigious universities and research centres, such as the University of Oxford, in a way was a natural collaboration. And I think it was, through the discussions of our team, our AstraZeneca senior management team, very much led by Meni Pangalos, who is responsible for the research and development, as well as Pascal Soriot, our CEO, together with the team at Oxford. And those discussions, I think one thing led to another. And I think it was then this common ground that we were able to find with Oxford to say, we are willing to do this at no profit. We are committed to making this a vaccine for the world, and especially to do this through equitable access, so to also have a very strong focus around low and middle income countries. And this is where Africa is so important. So
typically we feel vaccine manufacturing has a long way of working. Yes. So there are clinical trials, there are all kinds of things that happen. You and your other competitors managed to shorten that time rather drastically.
Yes.
I mean, what went into that? Was it just money, or was it that we relaxed the protocols? How were you able to come up with a vaccine? I think by February 2021, we in Ghana got our first doses, which is almost unbelievable.
It is. And I think the first thing is, despite the fact that the timelines were shortened, no corners were cut.
Okay.
It was very clear that the 9 companies, multinational companies that were in a way the front runners in the vaccine race, I would say, they all signed an agreement to say that, you know, all the necessary protocols, safety standards, quality standards will be met. I think what it took is a lot of very dedicated people literally working around the clock, from the scientists to the people in terms of production. You know, we have one common enemy here, and that's COVID. And I think that's really what brought the best to the fore. It has definitely also shown us what, as an industry, we are capable of, and how quickly, if it's really needed, we are able to move from concept and from a problem to actually finding a solution. Because vaccines, in the end of the day, is our way out of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I want to show viewers a chart to give a sense of how impressive AstraZeneca Oxford has been. So, which vaccine has the greatest global reach? This is a BBC chart that they prepared. This is probably yesterday. There you have it. So, Oxford AstraZeneca in 174 countries and territories. Then Pfizer BioNTech 102, Sinopharm from China 64. So, Pfizer BioNTech is US. Moderna US 52, Sputnik V Russia 47, Sinovac China 34, Janssen Germany 27. Then you have other ones there. So, I mean, this is serious, because walk me through this. How did we get here? Because I remember in March, there was an announcement by Europe that about 6 countries were suspending their use of AstraZeneca. It led to a big conversation, apart from the UK. So, how did we move from March 2021, where about 6 or 7 European countries say they are blood clots, we're not going to use your vaccine, to this 174?
So I think the key thing is, it is that commitment that we had around broad and equitable access. So if we look at that, yes, 174 countries. What I feel more proud of is the fact that 38 countries of the 174 are countries that's in Africa. So if we look at that, 9 out of 10 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine that's coming out of COVAX at the moment are AstraZeneca vaccines. COVAX is there serving the low and middle income countries. And if we look at COVAX alone has served more than 120 countries. So it is really that commitment right from the word go. We are doing this at no profit, and we are really focused on broad and equitable access. We are definitely not getting the, if we look globally, we do know that there is a real dire need in Africa, and the situation in Africa right now is quite critical. But at the same time, we are seeing that the vaccines are flowing.
Some people thought some of the skepticism about your vaccine and other vaccines was not just because of vaccine skeptics. Some people suspected competition because there's also geopolitics in there. All these companies I'm mentioning have specific places they work. So, for example, in the UK, they never stop using the AstraZeneca. So somehow, I mean, I'm sure you can't tell me everything, but how much of a setback was it when you heard in March that about 8 countries, Germany, France, Italy, said they were going to suspend? Add that to people are already skeptical about vaccines. How much of a setback was that for your company?
So I think for me it goes back to what the WHO is saying. And I mean, the WHO has a global reach, and they have been very clear in terms of their support around the AstraZeneca vaccine. They've made it very clear that from an efficacy perspective, it is efficacious, and from a safety perspective, the benefits of the vaccine far outweighs the risk. And I think that's what we need to go with. And they've been very clear also that this vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, should be rolled out in all countries, irrespective of the variants that you currently have within your country. And I think that's why we have that reach, as you've just seen on that chart, of 174 countries that have benefited from the AstraZeneca vaccine.
So there's clearly an issue of your company's commitment to equitability.
Yes.
As a consequence, there's a price issue there. But I want to show another chart, how the vaccine companies compare. So you have there about 6 or the 5 main companies. You notice that in terms of the storage, yours and I think to an extent Novavax can be stored in regular fridge temperatures. But the 2 main competitors, Moderna, Pfizer, BioNTech, you need extremely cold. Was this deliberate part of the strategy, or was it just the science that led to that? Just walk us through that.
Yes, it is the science that led to it. With the AstraZeneca vaccine, the basis that we are using is a tried and tested methodology. And I think we know in Africa that sometimes that last mile that you need to go, and even here in Ghana, what they're doing, using the drones to deliver the vaccines, I think it speaks to the fact that it's not just the non-for-profit approach that we have from a pricing perspective, but it's also then the benefits in terms of storage, etc., that also serves the continent of Africa and the low and middle income countries very well.
So viewers, the reason this chart is important is that the temperatures that you need to store certain types of vaccines, the infrastructure to store them, you wouldn't have. So for example, to get minus 70 degrees, you need to put certain things up. And don't forget that our second doses came from DRC, who said they could not manage the infrastructure of keeping even normal AstraZeneca vaccines. So coming back to the continent that you are in charge of, that must be serious, that countries, not only the fact that we have low penetration of vaccines, but quite a number of the countries don't even have what it takes to receive the vaccines.
So yes, I think it's a huge public challenge, and it's a huge public effort, that the ministries of health in many of the countries need to lead. And I think the good thing there is if we look at the main supplier of the AstraZeneca vaccine, into Africa, the Serum Institute of India, they've been a trusted partner of vaccines in Africa for many decades. And now I'm talking about, vaccines that we are using in our children, the immunization program for children, etc. So in a way, we do know that the infrastructure is there. Now with COVID, the challenge is just you need to use that infrastructure to also vaccinate adults. So I think it's a combination of that, as well as in many of the countries what we've learned from dealing with other pandemics and challenges, for instance, HIV/AIDS, what we have done, had to do there, Ebola. So I think there is a lot of knowledge already sitting in many countries in Africa that we can also harness in terms of how we need to effectively and at scale roll out the vaccine distribution.
This is the point of view. We're talking to the Africa director. They call it the Africa Area, Africa Country Director for AstraZeneca, in the person of Barbara Nell. And we're discussing lots of things. She's in Ghana, not just because of COVID. She is very strong on non-communicable disease and all of those things. We'll talk about them. But I just wanted to show one final chart for this segment for your comment. And I think this chart is almost like the tragedy of what we want to discuss, because this is the global vaccine rollout chart showing you how many people per 100, or how many doses have been administered per 100 people. So that the darker the image, the more doses, right? So North America, South America, it's brick red. Then you go to Russia, it's orange. The whiter it gets, the emptier it is. Now, circle Africa, it's faded. There's nothing in there. Mm-hmm. This is the area you are in charge of, one of the largest global manufacturers of corona vaccine. What's going on? Why don't we have the vaccines here?
So it is a very disturbing image, that, and I think the situation that we have in Africa right now has reached a critical point. I think one of the key things is, in February, March, we saw a lot of initial donations coming in. We saw Ghana leading the way, the first recipient of COVAX vaccines. I know there was almost a bit of a competition between Ghana and Ivory Coast, who is going to administer the first vaccines. And then because of this really devastating second wave that we saw in India, one of the things that happened is that the exports from India, there was basically a ban put on that. And that has caused this gap. So what has also happened is there's been a significant breakthrough that has happened in the last couple of weeks through a Japan summit that was held at the back end of June, as well as many of the pledges that's been made during the G7 summit, where countries that have an excess of vaccines are essentially donating vaccines. And what we currently know is that within the COVAX facility, there is commitment around 1.6 billion fully funded doses in 2021 and into 2022. So we continue to work very closely as AstraZeneca through COVAX with both the governments that should be receiving vaccines, such as what we have here in Ghana, as well as the governments that can be donating to ensure that the vaccines are flowing. And even in the last couple of weeks, since the export ban started in India, we have seen around about It was in the region of about 23, 25 countries in Africa that has already received another tranche of vaccines. And we need to continue to work on this. And we know that as the situation in India improves, we know that the Serum Institute of India has also given their commitment. And we know that the government there has also indicated that the export ban will be lifted. And once that happens, we will then see the vaccines once again flowing in. The good thing is that the Serum Institute of India has also built up their capacity. So I think once this export ban is being dealt with, then we will see the right quantities flowing in.
I'm a bit puzzled because I thought AstraZeneca had 25 manufacturing sites in 15 countries. So how come the Serum Institute in India, export ban India thing sort of stopped the whole... What is it that you manufacture COVID vaccines only in India? What's your supply distribution like?
So our supply approach, we have about 12 regional supply chains that we've set up globally, and we are working with around about 20 partners globally. So our model for distribution is really centered around two components. The one is the non-for-profit pricing, and then the other one is to do a full technology transfer, so basically to share our IP with the partners. The reason why we're doing this is that we can ensure a global level of quality and certainty that people can have within the quality of the vaccines that we are supplying. So why Serum Institute of India? As I said before, they've been serving the African continent very effectively for many decades. And Serum Institute of India is actually one of the biggest volume suppliers of vaccines globally, the quantities that they are producing. So they are actually a very good partner for Africa in terms of the scale that we need to reach here.
But some would then say that suggests that, or some could deduce that means that the types of vaccines we're getting from Serum may not necessarily be the same quality as you produce in other places, because you already distinguish between what you're doing almost like not for profit and then what you're doing on a commercial level. And don't forget, in the price build-up, when we looked at the various charges for vaccines, yours was the cheapest. So it seems to suggest that maybe we're getting an inferior quality vaccine through the Serum Institute.
That's definitely not the case. Whether it's a vaccine, an AstraZeneca vaccine that you're receiving in the UK that was produced in Europe, whether it's a vaccine that you're receiving in South America or one from the Serum Institute of India, they all go through exactly the same quality checks. There are about 60 checks that any AstraZeneca vaccine would go through. So I think there is no difference in terms of the quality that we will see.
So you're saying that there's good news in the sense that now some of the countries are surplus. And I just need to mention, again, by way of information, that some countries appear to have vaccinated everybody else. The last time we checked, US had vaccinated probably 99.9% of their population, okay? China, around 98% of their population. So you're talking about 1.2 billion people vaccinated. The UK has 120 doses per 100 people. They are gone beyond 100%. And you come to Africa, and Ghana is like 4 doses per 100. So you need to convince me that there's a change, because the countries seem to be hoarding. There's a whole vaccine diplomacy thing going on. And countries don't seem to be ready to want to share. In fact, there was a row between the EU and the UK. So what makes you confident that this promise from this Japan meeting is going to yield anything?
Because I think since May, when we've had the ban in terms of the exports from India, we have already seen donations flowing in to about 23 countries in Africa. So we are seeing that this is happening. We need to continue to raise the profile of Africa. We need to continue on any platform to talk about the need so that we can see those doses flowing in earlier and quicker. The situation in Africa is critical. You are absolutely right. And we shouldn't be 4 out of 100 is not a number that we should be proud of. We should continue to work, and this is where our collaboration as AstraZeneca through COVAX with the ministries of health here in countries like Ghana and across Africa, as well as the countries donating, we need to continue to drive and make sure that this is top of mind for them as well.
Just to get it clear, so these 23 countries, is it bilateral, or is this going through COVAX
It's a combination of both. So some of it is that a country donating can say they donate their doses to COVAX, and COVAX then makes a decision. In some cases, they might donate it directly. For instance, where a government might say, we have strong relationships with certain countries, and we will be donating to them. So what is important at the moment, and earlier in the year we sat down here in Ghana with the Honourable Minister of Health, and we've been working very closely with several groups here in Ghana to ensure that we are raising the profile and that the Ghanaian population will receive what they should rightfully be receiving.
So can the government of Ghana directly buy doses from AstraZeneca?
At the moment, for Ghana, the supply will come through COVAX. So what is important is this whole piece that we continue to work with COVAX, we continue to work with the Ministry of Health to ensure that COVAX knows exactly what the needs are and the criticality of what we need.
But just to clarify, is it a price issue or a policy issue, what you just said? Is it that the arrangement is that countries like Ghana have to buy through COVAX? What if the government of Ghana said we have $1 billion through some whatever and wanted to directly buy 500,000 doses from Oxford AstraZeneca serum? Is that possible?
So at the moment, our supply of AstraZeneca vaccine will go through COVAX.
Okay.
That's basically...
That's the arrangement.
Yes,
it has to go through COVAX.
Yes, and we were the first pharmaceutical partner that signed up to COVAX. And I think it's the best mechanism to get vaccines into the low and middle income countries, in terms of the reach that they have and in terms of the support that they can provide.
This is important for us here because there have been controversies about government trying to procure vaccines through middlemen. And we've had people offer, and I'm not sure of the brand of vaccines, I think it's Sputnik V and others, but there are businesses and people in the world who have offered to supply certain quantities to our government, and our governments have given letters of credit and stuff like this. So I need to understand if, for AstraZeneca, it was a policy that your vaccine supply to countries like Ghana would have to go through COVAX, and under no circumstance would you sell to a middleman to resell to a country like Ghana.
Yes, that is exactly what it is. So it needs to go through COVAX.
Amazing. Let's come to other things. So your training is in non-communicable diseases. And the way that media works and the way the world works, once there's a big pandemic, we all shift to communicable. So the communicable have more coverage. But you're in Ghana this second time around, at least in the past few months, not to talk COVID necessarily. You're here, I understand you're talking asthma, you're doing something on NCD screening, and Kambaya, Shanga, something pharmacy. I mean, why is the head of AstraZeneca Africa in Ghana and not talking about COVID and dealing with all these things?
So we are talking about COVID, but I think what is very important is if we look at the broader healthcare, and, very much at the moment the focus is on COVID and the vaccine and everything, and we continue to work on that. But at the same time, it's just as important to keep a focus on the non-communicable diseases, hypertension, diabetes. And this time around, what brought me to Ghana, specifically around asthma, we have an initiative called the Africa Pumua Initiative. Pumua is the Swahili word for to breathe.
Okay.
And we're really looking at many countries in Africa. We are looking at pediatric and adult asthma. And what we are focusing on this week here in Ghana are certain donations that we have made into hospitals for machines called nebulization machines. And it's essentially used for pediatric patients if they suffer from a severe asthma attack and they're brought into the emergency ward, that they are able to sit and they can receive their medication through the medication being nebulized. So really the Africa Pumua Initiative is about building capacity. So through these donations, and there's many more things to come there in terms of spirometry, as well as peak flow meters, which are devices that pulmonologists and doctors use to basically check on your lung function. So this all helps with the diagnosis and the better management of asthma. And then the other component that we are currently also working on with the Ghana Thoracic Society is around education and training. So really educating clinicians, pharmacists, nurses, PAs, etc., in terms of the diagnosis and the better management and maintenance of patients suffering from asthma.
There's something you scientists call comorbidities. And the impression I get is that what if you even got COVID-19, what would actually lead to your death may not be the COVID, but it could be something else. and you're discussing asthma, and these are all breathing. How serious are NCDs as comorbidities, and what does the research show?
So at the moment, one of the key themes that we see around comorbidities with COVID is especially around cardiovascular comorbidities.
Okay.
So when we say the word cardiovascular, it refers to things such as hypertension, having high blood pressure, something like diabetes, which many people will associate with kind of elevated, blood sugar levels. But very often diabetes also has a link to heart conditions and heart problems. So those are very often some of the comorbidities where we have seen in the statistics from many countries, including here from Ghana, that very often those people can have either it's easier for them to develop a more severe form of COVID, or very often having really bad outcomes.
Let's talk about how long you think this is going to last. Some people talk of something called long COVID. From the projections and the calculations and the supply, you've already said to me that the solution out of this is vaccines. Where in July 2021, what's your earliest positive prognosis of when a sizable percentage of Africans will be vaccinated? Or so we will know that we can cope with this pandemic properly.
So I think it's a little bit trying to look into a crystal ball and to see, because it's not just Africa. In order for us to really get on top of COVID, we need to get on top of COVID across the globe. So I think once the supply from Serum Institute and from India is really fully back online, and we are able to get a very steady stream of vaccines into Africa in terms of our own supply, as well as many of the other role players also taking active participation in supply into Africa, that we can get those levels up to where it should be, 60-70% of the adult population in countries being vaccinated, that we would be able to get on top of things. So I definitely think it will be into 2021, and maybe in some countries even into 2022, before we really reach that critical mass that we need.
Not to be pessimistic, but the concern I have is that the vaccine being produced now is for the basic COVID. Now we are hearing of the Delta variant. There's been all kinds of variants coming in. And it's not clear if the vaccine you produce or that of your competitors can effectively reduce either infection, hospitalization, or death for the Delta variant. Should we be worried?
I actually want to give all Ghanaians a real sense of comfort around that point. Very recently there was data published, real-world evidence data from the UK. Public Health England published it, where they specifically looked at people who have received 2 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine in the UK and then got infected with the Delta variant. And what we saw was a 92% protection against hospitalization and severe disease. And I think that should be something that I think should really give people comfort in terms of the protection that they do have when they...
Can you just repeat that? You're saying people who had received 2 doses of two doses of AstraZeneca, when they got infected with the Delta variant, it gave them a 92% protection against hospitalization and severe disease. In which country is this?
This was in the UK.
Wow. So not against getting infected, but against hospitalization and severe disease.
Yes.
What about death? Do we know its efficacy?
At the moment, that real-world evidence data is they are continuing to look at it, and they're continuing to gather the information. When this initial data was looked at, yes, it was basically also protection against death.
So you may not need to produce a different vaccine for Delta if these sort of numbers become clearer.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what the data is showing us at the moment, is that if you've had what we would call the original AstraZeneca vaccine, it gives you the protection that you need against the Delta variant.
What about mixing doses? Is that something you're open to? Because again, we're not sure what the science says, but I'm hearing, for example, in Thailand this week that there's so much trouble that they're mixing Sinovac first dose, AstraZeneca second dose. What can you say to us about that?
So I think the first thing to say is we continue to work here in Ghana with the regulatory body that would really make the decision in terms of how the vaccines need to be rolled out and how they should be used. At the same time, what is really good is that the data that the University of Oxford is producing is giving us evidence for some of these questions. So there has been studies done where they've looked at the usage of AstraZeneca with the Pfizer vaccine, the different combinations and permutations that you can have there. And that data shows, good efficacy and that it would be an option. And we obviously need to see how that then pans out. Once again, as we said earlier, it depends on what vaccine is feasible to be stored and to be used in a country. But it definitely does give the regulator options, and it gives them data to make the right decision for Ghanaians.
My final question to you, Barbara. So you are in charge of AstraZeneca Africa. We've seen what the India situation has led to in terms of essentially banning exports. There are 53 countries in Africa. You're from South Africa. You definitely should be working towards getting at least 2 or 3 manufacturing centers on the continent, which can produce vaccine in quantities that can roll out if this type of global vaccine war continues. So what can you say about that?
So I think from a COVID perspective for us, the main decision was speed. And this is why we partnered with an established vaccine producer such as Serum Institute of India. But you are absolutely right. For future pandemics and for future situations and for Africa not to be in the situation that it is in at the moment, we should absolutely be looking at those partnerships and establishing, looking at local manufacturing on the continent.
I was thinking for a bit more than that, but I'll take that. I was hoping you were saying, look, we've seen Ghana, you're doing some stuff, we could start something here. But it possibly suggests it's more than just a peaceful country. You need a credible institution with some sort of track record. You need some sort of supply chain type of thing going to be able to produce a vaccine in a place like this.
It's not vaccine production is not an easy medication to make. So yes, it's a very involved process. And as I say, I think this is where, into the future, we need to look at these
But South Africa is, to all intents and purposes, a developed country.
Yes.
Are you telling me that there's no institute in South Africa that within a year can start producing vaccines for use on the continent?
So there would definitely be options, and there are definitely organizations, and not just in South Africa, that would probably be able to fit that bill. The thing is, for the pandemic that we're faced with now, we don't need vaccine production to only start in a year or a year and a half's time. We need them now. And yes, as we've discussed, there are issues and challenges at the moment in terms of getting the vaccines into Africa. We are working on it. But at the moment still, to get on top of COVID right now, we need to have the speed. And I think that's the route that AstraZeneca has chosen. What we should be looking at is also, the other producers, what they are doing to also serve the African continent. It's not a one vaccine approach to serve Africa. This is where also across the pharmaceutical industry, we need to hold hands and we need to work with other companies as well in terms of what they can do, through COVAX to serve the African population.
We'll leave it here. Thank you very much, Barbara Nell. She's the country president for the Africa cluster AstraZeneca, who are a big pharmaceutical company on the continent, partnered with Oxford to produce vaccines, and they've rolled those out in over 120 countries. She's visited Ghana on 26th February when the first doses of the AstraZeneca vaccines came through COVAX. She's back in Ghana doing some work on NCDs, asthma, and a whole lot, meeting some very important people. She chose to speak to us on the point of view as well. Thank you. Thank you for watching. This has been a special edition of the show focusing on the COVID-19, the new infections, and our readiness to get vaccines. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be with you next time. Bye-bye.
The Point of View is sponsored by Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it.